Welcome back, best ever listeners, to another episode of Passive Investor Tips. I'm your host, Travis Watts. This is a short series that I'm doing dedicated to the passive investor. You can think of it as maybe free training or a free course. It's all topics related to investing, personal finance, strategy, and so on. And in today's episode, what we're talking about are the two sides of the money coin. So you've got personal finance and or saving, and then you have investing. I'll share with you a real quick story. I was raised by two very frugal parents who did a fantastic job at painting one side of the money coin for me, which was the saving and the personal finance. They taught me how to save money, buy the off-brand, shop for sales, don't buy things you don't need, stay out of debt. And while I truly appreciate those lessons, even more so in adulthood, there came a point where I started to realize that real wealth isn't built this way. I learned that there's another side to the coin, and it's called investing. And this side of the coin is what allowed me to inevitably reach financial independence, and it's what allows you to be able to expand your lifestyle and expand your means. Let me give you a quick example to paint this picture. Let's say that you only focus on one side of the coin, the personal finance and the saving. So we'll assume you make $10,000 per month at a job. You're a W-2 active employee. And we'll assume that you pay roughly 25% in taxes. We're talking about federal tax, state tax, Social Security, Medicare, things like that, that are auto-deducted out of your pay before you even receive your take-home. So if that were the case, and of course I'm painting a very conservative example, it would depend on the state you live in and all kinds of other factors, but we'll say you're left with $7,500 take-home pay after that. So the next biggest expense that most people have is their housing. So we'll say you've got the frugality mindset, you're very diligent with your money, you're able to snag a low rent apartment, or maybe you do buy a home and you manage to keep your mortgage fairly low, and we'll call that $1,500 per month. So at this point, you have $5,000 left of take-home pay. Now I'm going to take all other expenses, I'm going to lump them into one category just for this example. We'll say your bills, your utilities, your health insurance, your gas, your food, miscellaneous, and we're just going to wrap all that up and we're going to call it $2,000 per month. So if everything goes perfectly every single month, then you'd be left with $3,000 in the bank in cash. Now, this is the way that I was raised. Be frugal, save your money, and have a little bit of cash in the bank. And the last thing that we'll assume for this example is that you start this process at age 25. So we'll fast forward past, assuming maybe you went to school or college or something like that. And again, to be conservative, let's assume you don't have any student loan debt. You don't have any other kind of car loan or credit card debt or anything to worry about other than if you had the mortgage in that example. So if you were able to diligently sacrifice this way until age 65 and you deemed that age to be where you wanted to retire, believe it or not, you'd have $1.4 million cash in the bank, which sounds pretty good on the surface, right? I mean, after all, you'd be a millionaire. But let me explain the downside to using just this strategy. The first thing is it never allows you to expand your lifestyle, which to me is the biggest thing. What if you want to upgrade your car one day? It's pretty reasonable to think your car's not going to last you 40 years. What if you want to upgrade your home? What if your rent goes up? What if the property taxes and insurance go up on your home? And we know, reasonably speaking, these things are going to happen. What if you start a family? What if you have multiple kids that you have to care for? What if you lose your job one day? What if you get married and then get divorced and have to half everything up? This is simply called life, and these are reasonable things to consider in that example. But you know, one of the biggest wealth destructors, despite all of that, is called inflation. So that $1.4 million 40 years from now really isn't going to get you very far. And to paint that example, I was able to find an inflation calculator on BLS.gov. BLS stands for Bureau of Labor Statistics, kind of a fun calculator if you're a nerd like I am to kind of geek out. But I played around with this for the example, and what I did is I took $1.4 million in 1982. And 1982 represents a 40-year time span from then through today. And I wanted to see the buying power equivalent in today's dollars. And it turned out to be $4.3 million. What that means is in today's dollars, you would need to spend 4.3 million in order to buy the same items you could have purchased in 1982 for 1.4 million. Or said another way, it's about a 200% inflation rate in that 40-year time span. So the lesson to me is quite simple. Saving your money, having a little cash in the bank, and simply being frugal isn't going to cut it. So let's take a look at the other side of the coin, which is investing. And truly, this is the exact opposite scenario as saving and being frugal. If you decided instead you were going to take that $3,000 in cash left over at the end of the month and invest it, or said another way, $36,000 per year, and you were to invest it at an 8% annualized return, I had to throw some example number in there, starting at age 25, ending at age 65, representing 40 years, you would have, drumroll please, $10 million, actually a little bit over $10 million. And yes, inflation still obviously plays a role just like it did in the previous example, but here's the deal. The results are almost 10x, and to me, that's pretty astounding. So the bottom line in this episode, and the point that I'm trying to make, is that you really need both sides of the coin. It's not a this versus that, it's a combination. Because if you can't manage your money on a monthly or a day-to-day basis, you're going to end up spending all your money or going into debt. And if you don't invest, then you won't have enough to expand your lifestyle and expand your means and be able to do the things you otherwise would have been able to do. So with that, I'm going to conclude the episode, the two sides of the money coin. Like, subscribe, comment if you haven't connected yet with me on social media, whether it's LinkedIn, BiggerPockets, Instagram, Facebook, let's do it, Travis Watts, or at Passive Investor Tips. That's my handle. And again, if you've missed some of these previous episodes that I've made for this segment, we're creating playlists on YouTube and bestevercre.com so you can skim through the episodes. They're usually short, 5 to 7 minutes. They're intended for folks in a hurry. If you don't have a lot of time, you're waiting on the doctor, the dentist, you got a short commute, you just want to tune in to the Best Ever podcast and have a quick snippet and something to think about for the day or for the week. I hope it's adding some value to you. Have a best ever week, and we'll see you on the next episode.